Okay guys, so today we're going to look at la hora, and really that just means the hour or time, of course. That can mean both. But today we're going to check out la hora. We're going to learn how to tell time, and first and foremost, to ask what time is it, that's que hora es. Right? And notice that we're using ser. We're going to use the verb ser, right? And just as a little bit of a review, right here we have the verb ser, which means, of course, as you guys know, it means to be. And so we have soy, eres, es, somos, sois, y son. And I want to bring your attention to that because for telling time, we're going to use these two conjugations. So we're going to use the third person singular and third person plural of this verb ser. And so you see that right here with que hora es, right? And in your responses, so if somebody asks, for example, or wants to ask what time it is, they would say que hora es, right? And they want to know what time it is right this moment, right? To ask about an event or at what time something is going to happen, that's going to be next. So that'll be a que hora, and so we'll talk about that in a second. Again, we're going to use the verb ser with these responses to what time is it, or que hora es. And so if it's 1 o'clock or between 1 o'clock and 1:59, because that number one or that hour, if you will, is singular, you're going to say es. And so it's agreeing, of course, with this singular hour. So you would say, for example, es la una. If it's 1:25, for example, you would say es la 1:25. So you would still use es even though there's more than a singular number after the one. We're referring to the hour itself, one. So that's where we're making that agreement. So es la 1:25, es la una, and notice it's es la una, not es la uno or es el uno. You don't say that, you say es la una. And so looking at this number here would be es la 1:59. And so, of course, when we get over here to other ways of telling time, I'll show you how to do that a different way, particularly with a number like that that's almost 2 o'clock, where you would kind of advance to the next hour and then count backwards. But I'll show you that in a second. So, but again, just to reiterate, if it's 1 o'clock or any time between 1 and 1:59, you're going to use es, which is this third person singular conjugation of the verb ser. If it's plural, which is going to be everything else essentially, you're going to say son. So son las dos. So it'd be between 2 all the way to 12:59, because once you get past 12:59, you're back at the 1. So we would be back at the singular. So again, so if somebody asks que hora es, and it's any time beyond 1 to 1:59, that would be plural. And again, we would be agreeing with the plural numbers. And so we would say son las dos, just to go with our example we have up there, but making it 2, you would say son las 2:25. So again, son las 2:25. So making it plural. This is an attempt to draw a time at the 2 mark. So if that's too close to the 1 and 2, that's just forget about it, right? This is my attempt to do some drawings. But again, so if here's a couple other ways of going about saying time, right, above and beyond just using the number itself. And so if the time is on the 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, etc., you could say en punto. So for example, if it's 2 o'clock, right, whether it's p.m. or a.m., doesn't matter, you would say son las dos en punto. Son las dos en punto. So son las dos en punto. That's just saying it's 2 on the dot. And so that's how you would do that. If it's a 15, or again, if we were advancing forward, it's a 45 and we wanted to move forward to the next hour and count back 15, you could use it as well, using cuarto. But again, we'll get to that in a second. It's right over here. So if it's a 15, for example, so we'll start with that. like 2:15, again, whether it's PM or AM, doesn't really matter. And so we would say son las 2:15. Son las 2:15, which is saying it's 2:15. Of course, if you want to say son las 2:15, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But this is just another variation of saying really 2:15. So, and again, moving on down to the 30 mark, right? This is supposed to be the quarter mark. But moving down to the half hour mark, we could use media. And so you have, again, using just kind of staying consistent with the two o'clocks, if you will, right? And again, doesn't matter. It could be AM, PM, doesn't matter. So you could say son las 2:30, right? And so you could say son las 2:30, and that's saying it's 2:30. Of course, if you want, you can say son las 2:30, and that's perfectly fine as well. You're just saying the number 30 as opposed to saying, effectively 2:30 or something. So again, moving on down here, in much of the same way English has midday or noon, Spanish has el mediodía. And notice here that the medio is agreeing with dia, which is a masculine singular noun, el día. It's also why we say buen día, for example, or buenos días. And so, again, mediodía, and you'll see the difference right here, but mediodía is noon or midday, whereas right here, 12 a.m., right, is la medianoche, so midnight, literally saying midnight. In much of the same way you're saying midday right here, so same thing. And again, just to draw your attention to that bit of grammar, it's media because it's agreeing with la noche being a feminine singular noun. So media noche. So it's making an agreement there. Anyways, so this is a number of ways to sort of tell time and not, quote unquote, use the numbers, right? But of course, if you want to use the numbers as we have here, that's perfectly fine as well. And so moving over here, we have sort of a question answer in a sense. So if you want to, for example, look at or ask, as opposed to, hey, what time is it right now? And you want to say, at what time is the party, or at what time is the concert? You would then use qué hora. That gets you that at what time is. So, a qué hora es, in this case, la fiesta. So, a qué hora es la fiesta is not asking what time is it right now, rather it's asking at what time is the party, right? And then in that response, you would say, of course, la fiesta, right, the party, is at, right, that's your at, las 4 de la tarde. Right? La fiesta es a las 4 de la tarde. So that's, again, moving away from what time is it right this moment to at what time is an event, or at what time is something, right? And so that, to do that, you wouldn't do qué hora es, but you would rather include that in there, and you would say a qué hora es. So anyways, moving down from there, I kind of just titled it Other Ways, because there's multiple ways of telling time, right? And in much of the same way in English, you have a whole host of ways to say what time it is. Spanish probably has an equivalent. But at the end of the day, I want to give you just 3 examples, really 2, because this is the one we've been using the whole time. But a couple other ways that you might hear people use time. And so, again, just to reiterate, we have here son las 2:50, and the time we're going to work with for all of these is just going to be 2:50, right? Just to keep it consistent. So again, this is the one we've been looking at all the way through, and that's son las 2:50, right? You can do that. Now, keeping that in mind brings us to number 2, where with number 2, this example here is you count one out, the next hour, or 1 hour forward, if you will, and then you subtract back. And so that's why you have here son las 3:20, menos 10, because 250 is effectively 3 o'clock minus 10, because you're subtracting from 60, of course. And so you would say son las 3 menos 10. And again, that's a perfectly wonderful way of telling time. That brings me back to this one as well, because remember I said earlier that between 1 and 1:59, you would just say es la una, for example, es la 1:59. But most of the time, right, with something like that, now you could say 59, the number, but a lot of times you might find that someone's going to go this route and say son las 2 menos 1. Or they might as well just say son las 2, even if it's 1:59. But if we're going to be exact, right, you could say either way. You could say es la 1:59, or again, if you wanted to count 1 minute forward to the next hour and then do some subtraction back, of course you have absolutely, there's nothing wrong with saying son las 2 menos 1, for example. You could do that. And so anyways, back to this, we have son las 3 menos 10, so we're just counting back. And again, it's just a variation of this number 1, which is son las 2:50, which is saying it's 2:50. The last one is saying, essentially you're just saying 10 to 3, and that's really what you're doing. 10 para las 3, or faltan 10 para las 3, for example. You can see faltan 10 para las 3. And that's just saying, to make a direct translation, you're lacking 10 to 3, right? Because faltar is to lack, for example. But obviously, translated into sort of normal English or everyday English it's 10 to 3. And so you might hear someone say, if you ask ¿qué hora es?, they might say 10 para las 3 or faltan 10 para las 3. This plural agreeing with the plural 10 minutes that's remaining to 3 o'clock. And so really those are 3 ways that you'll hear time used in the language in Spanish. Now again, there's other variants and other ways of doing it, but these are probably the 3 most common. And again, I can't speak for all ways of telling time, but these 2 specifically are extremely common. And again, you'll hear this from time to time as well. So just if you happen to hear it, you know what the person's saying. And so to conclude, I just want to run through these times and sort of review everything we have on the board here, but look at it sort of as with actual numbers, right? And a whole variation of them as well. And so we have 4:35 and we have 6:15. So we'll get to integrate a lot of what we did over here on the board. And so right here we've got midnight, right, or 12 a.m. So you could say son las 12 de la mañana, right? If you want to say it's 12 in the morning. Or of course you could say es, right, because this is singular, es la medianoche. No problem with that either. Number 2 is noon or midday. So you could say son las 12 de la tarde, of course, not a problem with that. Or if you want to use this over here, you could say es el mediodía. Es el mediodía. And that's, either one is perfectly fine. Again, this is the one we've been using all through there, right? So you could say son las 12:50. You could say son las 3 menos 10. 10 para las 3. Of course, there's a wide range of ways you can tell time or say 2:50 in Spanish. 1 o'clock, again, just to make use of what we had here, you could say es la 1 en punto, right? That's really the one option you have, or you could just say, because it's AM, you could say es la 1 de la mañana. Of course, you throw in the de la mañana, right? And let's go ahead and just put those up here, right? Since we've been throwing them around a little bit. Right, and then so these are sort of indicating what time of the day it is, right? So you've got de la mañana, which is the morning time. You've got de la tarde, which is the afternoon, and then of course de la noche, which is the evening. And so in terms of when to use each, it's pretty similar with when you would use it in English. Like what you would consider the morning in English is effectively the same thing that they would consider morning in the language in Spanish. Same with night, same with afternoon. So, of course, we don't need to draw like a hard line through it, but that gives you sort of an idea. So moving along here to number 5, we've got 4:35 a.m. So again, 4:35 in the morning. So you could say son las 4:35. Of course, you could do that. You could say son las 5 menos 25. You could count back that way. Not a problem. But you could also attach the de la mañana, of course, because it's in the morning. So son las 4:35 de la mañana. Son las 5 menos 25 de la mañana. So that's all good too. Here's another good one. We've got an evening time here, right? It's somewhere in between these two. But nevertheless, we've got son las 6:15 or son las 6:15 de la tarde or de la noche, whichever one you really feel like using there. It's sort of a gray area at that point. But son las 6:15 or son las 6:15 if you just want to use the actual number 15. This is what we did over here. Again, number 7, we've got 7:30 a.m. So it's a de la mañana. So you could say son las 7:30 de la mañana, son las 7:30 de la mañana. Either one's going to work for that. Whether you choose the media or 30 is totally up to you. And lastly, here we have something I was alluding to earlier over there with the cuarto. We have son las 3:45. Of course, we can say that. We can use the number 45. De la tarde, of course, 3:45 in the afternoon. We can jump ahead to 4 and say son las 4 menos 15. And then again, what I was alluding to earlier with this one is you can count back and use cuarto as well, because it can work either way. That's totally fine as well. So you could say son las 4 menos cuarto, and again, implying that it's 4 minus 15. So you can do any one of those. And so hopefully this helps you guys sort of have a grasp on telling time in Spanish. And this is just a nice introduction, sort of time in a nutshell, if you will. And so hopefully that's helpful for you guys.